I have been wanting to do a breastfeeding update, and I know in one of my past pregnancy updates that I did, I was talking about breastfeeding and what my goals were. And I had originally said that my first goal was to make it to at least through the first 2 weeks. So now that it's almost been a month, and I'm so happy and excited that I did reach my first goal, I wanted to do an update and just talk about some of the things that I have gone through physically with breastfeeding and some of the things that I went through mentally with breastfeeding. And again, this is just things that I went through, and these are just how I felt, my opinions. But maybe it'll help someone, or someone can relate, or maybe just will make me not feel so alone if you've gone through something similar. One of the first things that I'll talk about is the physical part of breastfeeding. And when we went to a breastfeeding class back before the baby was born, the teacher was kind of asking us if we had any questions or concerns, and one of my biggest concerns at the time was if it would hurt and how it would feel. Before the baby, your boobs and your nipples are kind of there for pleasure. And I was like, how will it feel different? I mean, someone's just sucking on them. Like, wouldn't it feel like, how is it not gonna feel sexual, I guess? And so that was like one of my concerns. I mean, is it gonna hurt? I mean, I've heard people having cracked and bloody nipples, and that sounds scary. So is that something that's normal? So for me, as soon as the baby was born, within the first hour, they do have the baby latch onto you and breastfeed. Of course, there's no milk coming in. It's probably just the colostrum. I mean, that's mostly what it is. And I had just given birth, and I had just ordered some food, and I was eating, and the nurse was like, okay, here you go, and just popped the baby right on. And thankfully, Ethaniel did have a very good latch right away. I mean, he latched on really well, and he did a good job. So that was helpful for me, because I've heard stories of babies not being able to latch on or just having a weak latch. So I was thankful that he latched on. And so when she did that, it was kind of like, whoa. I mean, I didn't even have time to think about it. I mean, she just put him right on, and there was no like, what is it gonna feel like? Or, I mean, she just did it, and he was there, and then before I knew it, he was sucking. While I was in the hospital, you keep a log for every 2 hours or so. You're supposed to breastfeed no more than, I think they don't want you to go no more than 3 or 4 hours without feeding. I never got like cracked or bloody nipples because I felt like he wasn't pulling on them the wrong way. And I mean, I know some people just get them anyway, but they did start to get really sore. So that's just part of it. I mean, you've never had someone on them for that long, sucking that hard. So the soreness does come. The other thing that I was really surprised by was every time that he would latch on, I would have like contractions, and they are called after pains, I believe, because your uterus is now going back and shrinking. Every single time that I would put him to breast, it hurt so bad. Like, I was like trying to breathe through, like as if I was having a contraction, and it hurt, and you could just feel everything just tightening. That was something that I wasn't expecting. I didn't know. No one had told me. I didn't even know about after pains. I mean, I just didn't even know that that was such a thing. I didn't even think about, oh yeah, your uterus has to go back and it's gonna hurt. It was very painful, and I would just be, have him, feeding him like, hurry, pain, go away. It did wear off by, I believe, like about the middle of the second week or so. It started to wear off to where it wasn't as intense every single time I put him on, and it was more of just little cramping, but not like that hard, contraction type cramping. And supposedly breastfeeding does help it to contract faster, so it goes back down and shrinks sooner. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the nurse was saying. So maybe. The other thing that I had talked about a little bit before was that my milk didn't come in right away, so I was putting him to breast a lot. I mean, every time he would get fussy, because so he was pretty much nursing on demand, so if not every 2 to 3 hours, every time he was getting fussy. And when we brought him home, he was literally on for like 2 to 3 hours of just like off and on, but I would just be sitting there in the chair with him on my boob, and he was just getting so fussy. So I kept thinking, okay, maybe he's still hungry. So when we took him to the doctor, when you're supposed to go within the first like 24 to 48 hours to your pediatrician after the baby's born. So we went that Tuesday. The nurse weighed him and realized that he had lost weight, and he was getting a little bit jaundiced because he hadn't pooped or peed really since he wasn't eating. And I mean, I talked about it a little bit, but I had said, you know, how, I mean, I cried so much when we were on our way home. And then once I got home, I just felt so bad because I felt like it was my fault that my boobs weren't doing what they were supposed to, which was supposed to be feeding the baby. And I was just really upset because he had lost weight, he had jaundice, and the levels hadn't gone down from the hospital, they went up, and I just felt really bad. So while we were there, I had asked the nurse for a sample of formula, and so she gave me a little sample. So when we got home, that's what we did. We fed him formula, and he just sucked it down, and I just was like, man, he was so hungry. It was hard because I felt like I failed, and again, you're in those first 2 weeks where it's already hurting, your boobs already hurt, and that you're tired and you're emotional and all of this, and then add that onto it and you just feel like, oh my gosh, do I even want to do this? And I mean, at first, once that happened and I realized, you know, with the formula, I mean, gosh, I can just make a bottle and feed it to him, and I know exactly how much he's eating, and I know that he is eating, and I can have Josh feed him if I need to. It just made it seem a lot easier and more convenient because, I mean, formula is more convenient and there's nothing wrong with it. That's why it's there. It's an option. So like I've said so many times before, I have nothing against people who breastfeed, nothing against people who formula feed. It's your choice. So that's what went through my head. I'm like, wow, you know, I could just formula feed. I mean, do I really want to breastfeed? It's painful and I'm just tired, and I mean, there's just pros and cons for both. So I decided to just formula feed and then just have him keep going on and put him on my boobs after to just keep stimulating, hoping that my milk would come in. So I kept doing that, you know, for that first week, and then it wasn't until I think almost that Wednesday or Thursday I finally did get some milk coming in, and I was so happy. I was like, oh, okay, good, they do work. And that made me feel good. So then after that, it was down to only bottles I only would give him like 2 bottles during the day, but everything else was boob. And then at night, it was strictly breastfeeding at night because I didn't want to have to get up to get a bottle, first of all. Laziness. I'm like, I don't want to have to get up and go downstairs to make a bottle. So everything was at night was strictly breastfeeding. Then after that, by about Friday or Saturday, there was no more bottles and it was just breastfeeding. So some of the things that I will tell you that went through my head mentally in those first 2 weeks was that breastfeeding is hard in a way. Like, it's easier because obviously you don't have to buy formula, which is expensive, and your boobs are always there and the milk is always the perfect temperature, and it's, you know, at night, like I said, you don't have to go make a bottle, but you are the primary way the baby is eating. Every time the baby cries, every time the baby's hungry, that's you. You have to feed the baby because you're the bottles. And so that can get very overwhelming. It was making me feel very anxious because you're just like, your body is kind of no longer your own anymore, and it's not like you can just do whatever you want anytime, because it has to revolve around the baby's feeding schedule, or like, you know, because if you're nursing on demand, which is mostly what happens when they're newborns, every time, you know, you're needed, you have to stop what you're doing and feed the baby, and then you sit there and feed the baby. And at night, you know, waking up in the middle of the night to feed the baby, if it's every hour, every 2 hours, whatever the baby's letting you do, it starts to, you know, mentally it's like, I just want sleep, or why are you crying again? And I just started to feel very like anxious and just, oh my goodness, oh, this is hard, and I just want to do my own thing. Do I really want to continue breastfeeding? And those thoughts went through my head. And then I can remember one time that I was feeding him, like it was painful because, you know, your nipples are sore and they are getting used to feeding that much. So every time he would cry, I'm like just thinking of having to latch him on, and then he would latch and I was like, ow, 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 ow. Ooh, and it would hurt like at first, and then as he started going, it would feel better. But that first latch on is so like, oh, my toes would curl up, and I'm like, whew, take a deep breath. And also he would like once he was kind of finishing, he would start doing sort of like a lazy suck almost, or just from being on for more than 10 minutes, it would start to just, it didn't hurt. It was just, it was annoying, to be honest. I don't know what else to describe it as. And so I'm like, hurry up, baby, hurry up. I just want you off of me. I just want to put you down. I just want my boobs back to myself. I know that so many people talk about breastfeeding and the bond that you have, and it's just this magical experience. And I'm just going to be honest, for the first 2 weeks, I didn't really feel that. Like, of course I love my baby, and of course I'm so thankful that I can. But I'm just going to be honest that those sprinkles and rainbows and magical breast milk stuff just I wasn't feeling it. Like, I was doing it because that's what I needed to do to feed my baby. I guess it was nice to look at him when he was all peaceful and eating and stuff, but I don't know, it was like, but hurry up please, so I can get you off, so I can go to the bathroom, so I can take a shower, so I can eat something. So then my mind starts going through this whole thing of like, oh my gosh, forever. Like, I start thinking too big and start taking it too, like, in my head I was like, oh man, for the rest of my life I'm just gonna be needed, and I'm never gonna have time to myself, and what have I done, and do I really want to breastfeed forever? And I don't know, that's just where my mind went. And so I was crying, and of course Josh had to talk me off the ledge and was like, calm down, remember we talked about this, it's one feeding at a time, and you take it how you want to, and you know, if you ever don't want to do it anymore, then that's your choice. And it helped calm me down. And so I will tell you that if you plan on breastfeeding, having some type of support is going to be so crucial for you. I mean, I know for me that was such a huge help to have Josh there, just reminding me to, you know, take a breath, and it's okay. Like, we can do this. Like, the baby is going to be okay. The baby's gonna live, he's gonna be loved. And if that's breastfeeding or if that's formula feeding, it doesn't matter. So if you choose to continue to breastfeed, that's your choice, and I will support you. And I'm so thankful that he has been that for me. So now that I'm going into having done 1 month of breastfeeding, after those first 2 weeks, it did get easier. And so I will tell you that if you're planning on breastfeeding, just try really hard to get past those first 2 weeks, at least those first 2 weeks. And because it's hard, and you're gonna cry, and it's gonna hurt, and you're gonna question if you really want to, and ultimately it is your choice. But I will say that after those first 2 weeks, mentally and physically, it did get better. And now, I mean, now that it doesn't hurt as much, and now that we're getting into a routine and the baby's getting better at feeding and I'm getting better at understanding his cues and what he wants, then it's just gotten a lot easier, and so I enjoy it a lot more. So now I'm completely understanding the whole bonding and the magical experience, I guess, if you want to call it that. I still don't see it as magical, but I definitely understand the bonding that's there, because I love to kind of have that quiet time with him at night. So I do enjoy it so much more after all that first initial things had to work themselves out. But now that, you know, hormones are starting to go back into check, and again, the routine has made a big difference. So that's probably the best advice I can give you, is just give yourself time and be patient with yourself, and don't be so hard on yourself, and realize you're not a failure if you choose to formula feed. I don't know why so many breastfeeding, there's so much like a war between breastfeeding and formula. I don't get it, but it's your choice. That's it. And now my next goal was 3 months. So once we hit 3, we'll again just see how everything's going and how I'm feeling, and if I want to continue on from there. I hope that that was a little bit helpful, and I hope that it kind of helps you not feel so alone if you just weren't having all these like feelings of just pure bliss while you're breastfeeding in the beginning, because I sure as heck didn't. So if you have any questions, or please, if you have any comments, leave them down below. I always love to hear from you guys, and I'm sure that's all I have to say. And thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.